Good day. This is Ray Roberts from the Academic Partnership and from APEA, the Association for Professional Educators Abroad. Today I want to talk to you about how to present a lesson plan regardless of the topic, regardless of the subject matter, regardless of the domain. We're going to talk generally about how do we give lessons or give direct instruction. How do we plan lessons out for our students? So this is just a little conversation. We're going to try to make it brief about how you plan lessons. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to use the topic rites of passage. Right? Someone asked me to talk about how do I give a talk or a lesson on rites of passage. To me, that is a fun lesson, because you can really get the students engaged. You can really get them to talk about their personal experiences and their conversations they've had with their family members, their mothers, fathers, bigger siblings, uncles, aunts. This could be an outstanding lesson. So the first tip or the first point I want to make about planning a lesson that you may find difficulty in or that you may find boring is, number one, don't find it boring. Every lesson could be a cool lesson and an interesting lesson if you take the time out to properly plan it. And number two, which is the bigger point here when we talk about lessons are, what can I do to make this interesting for my students? And the answer to that is you have to personalize the lesson. You have to personalize the lesson. You have to figure out what aspects of that topic, of that theme, do students get interested about, excited about. What might they be interested about? And how do we get that information? How do we get that data? Well, I'm going to tell you, as a teacher, you must be a secret spy. You must be a double agent. You must get intel on your students. You must get to know your students. This will help you when you're planning lessons, especially those lessons that you might not be able to get too excited about, especially those lessons where you may deem them, oh, this is a boring topic. We all have that in our minds and in our interest level. It's just not boring. It's not interesting to us. But just because it's not interesting to you does not mean it will not be interesting to your students. So the way we get over that hurdle, the way we defeat that challenge is by getting to know our students. And we do that the first day of school, and we do that the last day of school. We're constantly getting intel about our students so we can do what? We can personalize the lesson. We can contextualize the lesson. Okay? So the students will get excited because the teacher is including aspects of whatever the theme that directly affect or really speaks to the student in a very personal way. We have something in our brains called the amygdala. And the amygdala says to a student, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for the student, if there's nothing of interest for the student, if the student doesn't see any value out of it, then you will have a boring lesson. They will say it's boring. But if you can connect themes globally, if you can connect themes personally, if you can get students to talk to one another in a meaningful way and get them excited because you have used aspects of their personal life into the lesson, of their interest into the lesson, then you're going to have a dynamic lesson. How do you do that? By listening. By listening to everything they say, even when they're not talking to you. Listen. Stay off your phone and listen. I know that's a hard thing to do, but you have to stay off your phone and you have to listen. And you need to take these mental notes. You need to record their conversations in your mind. And if need be, Write it down. Mansour likes this. Sarah likes this. Dahlia likes this. Hakeem likes this. Okay? So think about that as you enter your classrooms tomorrow, about getting intel, getting information about your students to help you do what? To help you plan dynamic lessons. So let's get into it. So the first point, the first main and major key is about personalizing your lesson. Now I'm going to use the theme of rites of passage, and that's RITES of passage, rites of passage. That is a dynamic topic, theme of discussion to get students talking, to get students interested. And we're going to use the basic teaching paradigm to actually serve as a structure to how we're going to get students to talk, write, read, listen about something, about the theme of the rites of passage. So, got my little handy whiteboard here. These are pretty cool to have. So, when we get students to talk about the rites of passage, the first thing we want to do in our lesson is we want to have some type of greeting. Okay, right here. Some type of greeting. Okay, all right. And this greeting does not have to take a long time. It can be as simple as hello. How are you today? How are you feeling today? You doing fine? So you greet the class. Okay. Why is that important? You want to calm your students down. You want to get them prepared. You want them to know that the experience they had, the moments before they walked in your classroom are now different. That you're there to be a nurturer. That you're there to give them some dynamic information. That you're there to see them as equals. That you're there because you care about what they have to say. That's our job. Okay, so you want to greet them. That should take a minute or two. And then you want to start off with the ever important, warmer. Okay, you want to start off with your warmer. Now your warmer should be anywhere. It could be anywhere from 2 to 5. It shouldn't go really any longer than 5 to 8 minutes. Okay, and what is this designed to do? This is designed to get your students, as I say, out of survival mode, get them focused on your subject, what you're going to be talking about today, and you can have a warmer that is directly related to the lesson or indirectly related to the lesson. Okay? So in this case of rites of passage, okay, we can ask questions to the students, and the question will be on the board. And we can ask a question like, what do you think you're going to, this is for, let's say, an 8th grade class. What do you think you're going to do for your 16th birthday? All right? Now remember, the warmer must be what? What is the warmer designed to do? Get them focused on the lesson. Get them interested about the lesson. Okay? Get them prepared to learn about your topic. That's that warmer. That's what that warmer's job. So this warmer must be easy. It must be extremely easy. Do not ask a hard question. Do not concept check from yesterday unless the question is going to be very easy and it's going to pertain to something that you're going to talk about today. It's a carryover into today's lesson. Okay, so ask a question. Ask a question questions that have very, very easy answers, or right or no right answers are great. So a great question for rites of passage would be, what are you going to do on your 16th birthday? Or here in Saudi Arabia, this might be a touchy one, but it can work with the boys, 8th grade boys. It can work with the girls too. You just got to make sure you got the question the right way. But What will your first car be? What would your first car be? Okay, what would your first car be? Here's another one for rites of passage. Where would you like to work? What would be your ideal company? What would be your ideal company you work for? Okay. Here's another one. When you move out of your parents' house, what type of house might you move into? An apartment, a condo, a big house, a small house? And briefly explain why. And mind you, you can have them either think about this, or you can have them write it down. Okay? I'm just giving you one of many things you can do, just to show you which direction you want to go in for rites of passage. Okay? Right? And you can think of other cultural or universal things that would be rites of passage. So the question of what might you do, what will you do on your 16th birthday? You know, in many cultures, the 16th birthday is a rite of passage. It makes you're now a man or a woman in a lot of Western cultures. Some cultures is a little bit older. Sometimes I think for some religions it may be 13, but universally, some people have sweet 16 parties. It's a rite of passage. The car one, your first car is a rite of passage. Or getting your driver's license, it's another rite of passage. It's a Western one, all right? Rite of passage. Now, the good thing about this, you're opening the door. You open the door to conversations about other people and their cultures. And because we are teaching in international schools, we could talk about that. We could talk about the diversity in those rites of passage. At what point are you a man? At what point are you a woman? Okay, that might be a high level question for an 8th grade class. So you want to ask questions like, what are you going to do for your 16th birthday? What would your first car might be? What would you like your first car to be? What would you like your first job to be? What company would you think would be cool to work for? Boys might say, a gaming company. Okay. So you want to lead them down that road of rites of passage. Okay. After you get them to share, because you want to ask them. After you get them to share their warmer, that easy question, this leading them down that road on your theme of rites of passage. Then you want to get them to do some activities, some guided activities that will give them more information about rites of passage. Okay? So here, you want to actually have a control. Notice it says control practice. So here, you want to now give them some questions to think about. Okay? And give them some ideas that the teacher will control directly. Okay? That you're going to help manage. Okay. So the next group of questions might be ideas like, what do you think 16-year-old boys in Russia do? What do you think 16-year-old boys in Russia do when they turn 16? When they celebrate their 16th birthday? Why would that be? What might you think happened? Does anyone know? Okay. Here, you want to put out your main themes of what the rites of passage are. You want to have controlled examples already set, maybe in flashcards. Now, this doesn't have to be this is not your reading activity. Here, you might want to get your students up on their feet, have flashcards that may have rites of passage from different cultures. Excuse my daughter, she's making a lot of rites of passage from different cultures. Okay, and the students might walk around the room and talk about their cards, okay, on their flashcards, on what are different cultural rites of passage. Okay, so you can have them talk about that, exchange, report back, and put them in groups, maybe pairs, and have each group talk about their card and why they think this culture uses this, celebrates or uses this ceremony as a rite of passage. All right. Here you want to also put in keywords like ceremonies, rituals. You should introduce these words. Rite. What does rite mean? What does the term rite of passage? What does that mean? Okay. Okay. So keywords related. Again, you can have students walk around the room and try to match their cultural event or their ritual or ceremony or rite of passage with the country they belongs to. So, for instance, if someone has a sweet 16 party, okay, and then obviously one of them might be United States, so they have to find the person who has United States, and this could be a guess, okay, and then they pair up. So if they think it's, let's say it's Sweet 16 on one card, and the person picks someone that says South Africa. I don't know if they have Sweet 16 in South Africa or not, but let's just say South Africa. Okay, but that's not the answer. Let's say we were looking for America. Then when we go back to report out, the teacher will control that and tell why it's not South Africa. Okay, and where it should, in what country that person should have paired with. Okay, so you can do a lot of creative things in your control practice. Okay, when you sit them back down, you make sure you give them a working definition of what rites of passage is after they have already kind of played with it. Okay, and how about this? How about you have the students give you a definition of what a rite of passage is? Okay, how about you guys agree as a class on a good working functional definition of rites of passage? Okay, from there you can do some expansion. You can expand the idea. Okay, you can talk about whether these rites of passage make sense now. Are they archaic? You can introduce new vocabulary here related to rites of passage and show how those words or those ideas or concepts extend the idea of rites of passage. You can also talk about how rites of passage are changing. You might want to introduce whether technology, the internet, computers are changing rites of passage, whether that's a good thing, whether rites of passage should be should always, whether some rights should be eliminated or ended or end rather, or cease to be recognized. So you can, again, it depends on what direction you want to lead your students down, but you want to expand on the idea. Okay, you want to expand on the idea there, and you can introduce new vocabulary words that look maybe slightly more difficult. Okay, in the control, when you present the vocabulary words, they're not going to be as difficult. Okay, here you want to use words that extend that meaning of rites of passage and get the students to think from a different perspective about rites of passage. I'm kind of messing with it. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, then we'll have the students do some type of listening activity where they have to listen maybe to a story or a commercial or something dealing with a rites of passage, and then they have to maybe fill out fill in the blank to answer the questions based on what they heard, or some other type of activity to demonstrate that they actually were listening. All right. Try to avoid taking notes. Have something, again, controlled for the student to do an activity. And again, you want that listening activity to be pretty brief, maybe no more than 3 to 4 minutes long. Okay, and then you have some activity that the student will do to verify that they listened and heard and comprehended the main points. So you really, for listening, you really want to go here for the listening activity. This is kind of your whether they're comprehending what they heard in the prompt. It can be by your voice. It could be a recording. It might be something that you play on YouTube. Okay, only try to play the audio version though. You can play the visual, but make sure there's an audio aspect with good dialogue that's appropriate to their age. Okay, so make sure it's appropriate to their age, and obviously that the content is appropriate. Again, if you're playing YouTube videos, please watch that video or any type of video or any type of listening prompt. Please play that prompt yourself several times to make sure there's nothing inappropriate. There's no profane words. There's that it's on grade level, and it's that your students can handle that type of listening activity. After the listening activity, you want to go into a reading activity, okay, where they get a chance to read about rites of passage. And again, this can be in-class reading, this can be personal reading, this can be group reading. Okay, again, you want, when there's some strategies, some reading strategies you want to do, you want to make sure you introduce the vocabulary words, the words that may be lower in frequency for the students, words that they may not understand. It'd be a very good, it'd be very nice if you could do that in the control practice and expansion part, but also worse in the writing opportunity that they might not understand. I'm playing this thing. Ooh, how you do that? Okay. Words that they might understand. You want to introduce that reading, introduce those words before they start reading. Also, any type of lexis that they might not understand, you want to introduce at that time before they start reading, so they know. Okay. Same thing for the listening prompt. Okay. You want to play it several times for them, not just one time. Okay. If you take my TESOL class or any CELTA or TESOL class, not just mine, we'll go over how you teach listening, how you teach reading. Okay. I'm just giving you the kind of really quick, fast, dirty idea here. Okay. And then we have a community activity. This is where the students are able to talk about and show and demonstrate to the rest of their class that they understand the core parts of the lesson. Okay, that they understand the core parts of the lesson. Here it could be games, that could be reporting out. There's many types of community activities. Here, this is the part where you decide whether you have to reteach, because you're going to do a lot of concept checking here, making sure the students actually got everything, they got the main theme about rites of passage in the lesson. Okay, so you can include a little bit take a little bit that they read from the reading, the listen, the expansion, the ideas and concepts you talked about in the expansion, and the control practice, even in the warmer, to make sure they understand the main themes, that they comprehend. Now, in all of this, you're making sure that in each activity you're moving them up Bloom's, okay, as much as you possibly can. You want to move them up Bloom's taxonomy, making sure you're asking them questions that's engaging their cognitive abilities. Okay, we're not staying just on one level of Bloom's, we're moving up Bloom's. Okay, if you're not familiar with Bloom's activity, Bloom's taxonomy, we could talk about that at a later date. But you got to become familiar with that. Okay, so obviously you want to have objectives that's going to highlight where you want the students to be and where you want what you want the students to do. Then the last part, because we're running up on 25 minutes here, I'm going to cut this. Okay, the last part, the last thing I want you to understand is what teacher does in your lesson. Make sure you have direct acts that the teacher will perform to get the students to do what you want them to do. So when you write a lesson plan, okay, and you're thinking about how you're going to execute this lesson, all right, you always start with what the student will do, all right, because that's going to be based on what? Your objectives that you write. So all the things you want the students to be able to do, you want the students to be able to read, listen, identify, define what a rite of passage is, write a sentence explaining rite of passage, provide an example. Okay, these are all objectives that you might want to have the students do within this lesson. Okay, compare and contrast rites of passage from different regions of the world or different countries. Okay, so you decide in this lesson what the objectives will be, and then you will actually create activities here in the structure that will meet those objectives. So here, when we talk about, you're going to start with what the student does first. Okay, so what do you want the students to do? Because that's going to be your objective, right? And then you ask yourself, what does the teacher, what do I as the teacher have to do to get the students to do it? So you always write what the student will do first, and then ask yourself, all right, now what do I need to do as a teacher to get them to do that? Okay? All right. I hope this helps someone out. Again, this is rites of passage. This could be a history lesson. This could be an English lesson. Okay? This could be a social studies lesson. This could be a reading. If you're a reading teacher, this might be your theme. Okay? The whole point here is to make it interesting. And the way we make it interesting is by getting to know our students and then following this simple structure. It depends on your creativity. You have to be creative. Do not rely on the textbook to do this for you. Okay? You have to sit down. You have to think about this. The textbook does not know your students. They do not know those angels that's in your classroom. They do not know Mansour. They do not know Sarah. They do not know Makia. They do not know any of these. They don't know. Those textbook writers are sitting in a office or their homes in Oklahoma, USA, New York City, USA, Houston, Texas, USA. They do not know your Abdullah. Okay? So you have to take those themes and use your textbooks to assist you, to support you. The textbook might have a great reading selection about rites of passage, where it is, or a great listening activity online about rites of passage. But it takes you as the teacher who's live in that classroom to connect what's in that textbook to your students who are Jordanian, Saudi, American, Palestinian, Syrian, Kenyan, South African, Russian, Philippines. It takes you to make that connection. That's why you get paid all the good money. Okay? I hope this helps someone out. We're at 30 minutes. Please be sure, if some of these concepts are foreign to you that I'm talking about, please enroll in a good teaching program. You can enroll in my program. You can enroll in CELTA course. There's a lot of good programs and activities out there to help you in your journey to be a great instructional leader. A lot of programs that help you champion someone's cause. With that, I'm Ray Roberts. Again, I hope this was beneficial to someone. We will talk to you later. Happy teaching.